Riverside.
Good morning, Mr. White.
Good morning, Mrs. Angel. How are you today?
Oh, I'm wonderful. It's been another glorious week at work, but we have a super duper teaching star, an author we are going to learn so much from. So let's introduce Beck Thompson to the studio. Welcome, Beck.
Hello, good morning.
Welcome.
Everyone's excited. They're already excited to see you. I told you they'd be excited to see you. Shh, everyone.
Calm down,
right.
calm down.
Calm down. They're just excited to hear everything about you, Beck. So we're going to get straight into it. Wonderful. So our alumni that Beck is a part of, she went to a number of primary schools throughout Victoria, and she went to secondary schools in Bendigo. She went to about 3 different ones, and one of them has actually since closed down, not because of Beck, obviously. And obviously then she's gone to university, and at La Trobe University in Bendigo, and to study her education degree. Whitey, tell us more about the awesome Beck.
Beck is a primary teacher, a mother of 3, an author of the memoir Chasing Normal, which we'll be speaking about a fair bit today. She works predominantly in special ed, trauma on a casual basis, special interest in talking about her story, and the impact teachers have on her life throughout her schooling. Welcome, Beck.
Morning, thank you.
Hello, Beck.
It'd be lovely to wake up to this every morning.
I know. Get on board. So it was wonderful. I've crossed paths with Beck on a number of different social media channels, and have had seen her book Chasing Normal advertised, and I've had a read, and it is a harrowing and inspiring story. And I just want to start with thanking you so much, Beck, for putting it on paper and sharing such an important story with the world.
Yeah.
Thank you. Yes.
So we're gonna get into that a little bit more today, and find out specifically initially though. So you've chosen education for yourself, and so our first question that we always ask all of our guests is, who is the teacher who's had the most significant positive impact on your life?
Well, I had a few, but definitely my earliest influence was when I was in grade 4, and I was living through quite an abusive home life, and his name was Mr. Cantlin, and I just remember him. I'd been at this school and in this environment, this abusive home environment, for 2 years at this point, and I don't remember the other ones. But Mr. Cantlin really stood out because he had a wit about him, which I really resonated with. And given that I wasn't allowed to laugh, or there was nothing to laugh at home, it was just a really nice thing to come to school and a break from what I was living through. And he kind of noticed my strengths, and, he'd pull me up out of the class sometimes and just get me to tell a joke. And now I don't remember the jokes, but he obviously saw something in me that thought, come on, Rebecca's got to get up and tell us a good old chinwag today. And I don't know, he was just stood out as someone that really just took notice of me and smiled. And and it was just something that I needed at the time, that, moving forward, when you look back, you don't realise how much of a lifesaver that actually was. Yeah.
That's beautiful. And did any other teachers, so obviously from reading your book, I can only imagine, so were you a jokey telling kind of storytelling kind of kid at school?
Well, I know prior to moving into this kind of abusive environment, I must have had something, because I think my prep teacher was the first time I was ever kicked out of my class, because we were doing, when you get the vegetables and you dip them in paint for shapes. They cut the potatoes in half, and you're just supposed to dab it into the paint and put it onto your paper. But I decided it would be funny if I dabbed it into the paint and licked it. And my teacher, she was an American. Her name was Mrs. Shank, and she just screamed at me across the room and ordered me out of the room. So I must have had a bit of wildness in me that was kind of beaten out of me after that. But yeah, I definitely did. I definitely had teachers along the way that kind of noticed that I could have a little bit of a laugh and a joke at myself, of course. And yeah, so I always loved them. I think even my year 12 history teacher, Bill Parker, talking about World War II and the graphic nature of all that. So it was nice because he could have a laugh and he could have a joke. And so I always resonated with the teachers that could just kind of get on your level and have a bit of a laugh and make learning fun. Yeah.
Absolutely. Do you employ that in your teaching now?
Yes. I mean, it's probably a bit sad. And I say it to my kids and they just go, please don't say that, Mum. But I do, because I just love humour as a way, as an expression, but also sometimes I think it's just a perfect gateway to learning. I mean, it definitely engages kids when they go, the teacher can have a laugh, and it kind of makes us more human and opens up those connection channels, and they're more receptive to you, I think, if you can have a laugh and a joke. And yeah, I love it.
Absolutely. It really is powerful, and it doesn't matter how daggy the jokes are. I mean, and this is something that I really am thankful for, because my jokes are very, very daggy, and regular listeners will know this. But it really does galvanize a group, even if they're sort of groaning at you. I think they appreciate the effort. I think the student appreciates the effort.
Well, yeah, and look, because of the group of kids that I generally work with these days, it's even more powerful because, as I'll probably share later, a lot of these kids have such rough home lives, and they probably don't experience a lot of laughter, but it takes a little bit longer with these particular kids, and but once you get it, once they kind of go, oh, that was funny, it just kind of brings them in a little bit closer. And to watch that, I love that. That's my thing. Yeah. It's like I know I've got you now. Yeah. And they're more willing to want to actually relate and stay in the class and be present. So I think there's a lot you can do with it. It's such a great thing to use. I love it.
Couldn't agree more. This morning, as I was greeting the students, there's one particular I always greet the students down the front of the school whenever I don't have meetings on, and there's always somebody down there to greet them with a smile. And I got to do that this morning, and one of the girls I've been spending a bit of time with, because she brings pretty spectacular bit of sass to the school.
Spectacular sass.
Yes, as she was walking towards this morning, I greeted her with a round of applause and a little bit of shimmy. She's here. Here she is. Oh, I know that inside she was smiling and as excited to see me as I was to see her. But I could see there was a lot of eye rolling, but she also she brought it up later on in the day. She said, quite the moves this morning, miss. I was like, I knew that she appreciated them deep down inside.
Absolutely.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
Yeah, we are remembered sometimes. Yes. In the dagger column, as you say, but I'm
comfortable. That's my comfortable space, Beck.
Yeah, it's better than the other way. So
correct.
I'd rather be remembered for humour than anything else. So.
Yes, absolutely. And so, are these teachers that you talked about before that had the big impact on you? Are they aware that you have gone on to be a teacher and that you are the author of such a significant book?
That's a really good question, because I haven't, no, not really, because, look, one of them's probably passed away now. He was principal of a tiny school that I moved to, and there was like 55 kids in the entire school, and that was a very long time ago. So,
you're not that old, Beck. You're not that old.
Well, but he had been at the school for like 40 years.
Right. He was old.
He was. But I've had a sneak peek of where Mr. Cantlin is, and I believe he is still. I think he's a principal. But do you know what's funny? And because I've had people say this to me, why don't you track him down and tell him? And the reason that I haven't, and I probably won't, is because his memory is so dear to me. And I think sometimes when we and it's not for everyone, but for me, I don't want that tainted in any way, because it's such a part of my story, and it's a part of what makes my kind of recovery and healing so important. And look, I kind of want to preserve it. And so I have done a little bit of internet stalking. That sounds creepy, but
it's called a deep dive. We call that nowadays, Beck.
Okay.
We don't like to
okay. Just edit that out. Is that what it's called? That is a much better version. I'm going to write that one down.
It's exactly the same thing, but
yes.
the preferred term is a deep dive.
Okay, yep. I'm going to take a mental note of that. Far out. Okay, so I have taken a little bit of a deep dive, and I think I know, but I just want to preserve it. I just want. Yeah.
I think he'd be incredibly proud of you, and I know that when students whose stories have been revealed, the deeper story has been revealed afterwards, I have just always had so much, like, an even deeper respect for what you did and how you presented yourself to the world and what you got done, regardless. But I can totally understand where you're coming from there. But so we may not engage with him, but I know that he'd be incredibly proud of you. I'm sure, and he already is incredibly proud of you.
I hope so.
Yes.
I mean, and it was the circumstances that I left, because I literally kind of got plucked out of the school that day. So, and I didn't get to say goodbye. So it's actually like, it's even more sort of important, because I think I wrote about it in the book, that I was leaving and no one knew why. And, hoping that he knew how much he meant. And because I was going into another unknown environment, it was more important to me to go, gosh, I hope my next teachers like him.
I like them.
So, I don't know. It's I might do it one day. I might not. I'm not sure.
Yeah. Well, what a special and important moment and relationship, and just a great example of how meaningful those and important those relationships and those interactions that we're having with kids every day. So you chose teaching.
Absolutely.
Can you tell us a bit about your choice and your choosing to work in special education as well?
Oh, the choice. Look, cards on the table. I actually kind of fell into teaching because because finishing school, school was such an important part of my life, and it really was a huge distraction to my home life. And school provided so much stability and routine and of course, exposure to connections that I just wasn't getting or building at home. So I guess when I left school, I had a shocking gap year. Do they still call it a gap year? Mine was like a lap year. It was a terrible year because I was so lost without the routine of school. And so I actually had applied for business, but then I got really scared by one subject. I thought, I can't do that. That was statistics. It's pretty boring anyway. So I went, what else can I get into? And teaching was the only other degree I could get into. And I looked at the subjects, and I'm such a book lover, and I saw children's literature, and I went, right, that's what I'm going to do. And look, as much as I'm such I love learning, I'll be a learner forever. But it was a way for me to actually study and stay in that school environment, funnily enough. It was definitely a bit of a challenge because I had a different side to teaching. I guess I didn't come in just with the ambition to teach and impart wisdom. It was, for me, I kind of saw the other side of it, like, are these kids okay? And
yes.
I could kind of micro manage that kind of, I had a different set of glasses on, so to speak. I was looking for the kids that needed something, that wanted to be seen and nurtured. And that's kind of where my heartstrings pulled, more so than, I guess, the curriculum.
Yeah,
content.
And do you feel like, so we talk about here, other than Whitey's weekly wisecracks, that you've just further endorsed just how daggy all of those are, and those will continue to stay daggy forever because of everything you've said today, Beck. Thank you so much. So we also talk about those magical moments on here, those where you know as a teacher that you've made a real difference with a student. So Mr. Cantlin was obviously that person for you, and so hopefully he knows the impact that you had. But so have you had an experience in teaching where you know that you made a big difference with a student?
Oh gosh, I mean, I would have to go way back. Look, I mean, I'm still in contact with about 3 students from 21 years ago. I think they just turned 30 last year.
It's a pretty good sign that you made an impact.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, it's a bit weird when they follow you on Instagram, but and vice versa. But oh look, gosh, I know there would be. I know. I guess I can't single one out. I know I had a child for 2 years, 20 years ago, and he came from horrific home life. I mean, it was just, you don't even know how these kids survive, really. And it was really, that nurturing he needed over anything else. And, not a lot of learning is going to take place. So you kind of focus a lot on the compassion and support and nurturing. I like to think that he remembers me, if he's still okay out there, but yeah, look, I actually can't think of. I guess recently I had a student, and I don't even have him that much. Last year I was in an inclusive class, and I actually ended up getting quite a few that just did not want to be in the classroom for whatever reason. It was I just didn't want to be in that environment. And this boy is such a lovely boy, and I saw him the other day as I was going to the 9 o'clock start, and he just looked at me and he goes, "I miss you, Miss Beck." And I went, "Oh, isn't that lovely?" And he goes, "Yeah, why can't you be with me more often?" And I love those moments.
Yes.
There's a couple, but
those are the moments. Those are the moments that don't happen in the business. If you had done a business degree, you wouldn't have had somebody having an interaction with you like that. That doesn't happen to the bankers, the lawyers out there.
Really?
No. Word on the street. No, that's just something. That's just some feedback,
Yeah.
and
especially
as teachers,
not 20 years later. No,
exactly. And so we get given lots of feedback as teachers. So we get given the eye rolls and the realies and all of. So we're constantly getting non-verbal feedback, but we're also getting that non-verbal positive feedback. And then sometimes these little beautiful things slip out of their mouths where they say something utterly delightful and heartfelt, and you know that that whatever you've done, all of those actions that you've taken with them previously have hit the mark and made a difference in their lives.
That's nice.
It's pretty special things about teaching.
Yeah, absolutely.
It can't be beat. It can't be beaten. That's why our profession is the best. Now, Beck, you mentioned that you have a love of reading and of novel books. I want to know let's talk about your book for a second, Chasing Normal. You can clearly write. I mean, it's very, very well written. Yes. And so I want to step back a bit. Before I ask you, why you wrote it and getting into all that, what books were you reading when you were writing? What books are your favourite books? What books stick out in your mind?
It's really graduated. I don't know if it's graduated over the years. I'll say it's graduated over the years. Look, I went from reading, and this is going to sound really nerdy, but I guess explaining my upbringing might make some sense. But I've always been mostly 99% non-fiction. Just have a love of knowledge, and I didn't really learn a lot from my caregivers. So I was kind of already on a few back steps there already. So I started out reading like how to make friends and how to have boundaries and people skills, and because I wanted to learn how to do all those things, and then kind of the only fiction I did read was throughout children's literature, where we had to read 3 books a week and, you know, discuss themes and all that sort of stuff. But now I just love, I don't know why, I think I did this seminar with Dr. Judith Howard from QUT Brisbane, and it's probably 7 years ago now, and I just remember her saying something about the brainstem and how you can't learn if your brainstem's activated, or it's not as you can't access the thinking while it's activated. And I just went, that is so fascinating. And I kind of just went and grabbed the first kind of neuroscience book that I can't tell you right now. And it just kind of went from there. And I just started reading neuroscience and the brain. And then, you know, I read a few trauma books now and stuff. So it's kind of a bit varied, but it's all sort of neuroscience based. It's gosh, I'm just looking at my whole treasure trove of books. I just get interested with the brain. I just find it really interesting. So I tend to.
And does it resonate with you then? So obviously your harrowing childhood and the person that you have become now, the adult that you've become, and the road that you've traveled, and you're obviously a very reflective person, evidenced by your book and taking yourself right back there for the reader to really experience what you experienced. So as you're reading those neuroscience books, is that helping you to understand your brain and some of those behaviors that you displayed then throughout your journey?
Yeah, definitely. Oh gosh, I kind of highlight everything. When I read the book by Bessel van der Kolk, The Body Keeps the Score, and I swear I chant that book all the time. I managed to find a quote and just throw it. It's like a Seinfeld line. There's just always a quote to throw in with that book. But every time I was reading that, I was just like, man, that's like me. That's like me. That explains me. That explains trauma. That explains. So
That's awesome.
it is. It's you know, it's just so fascinating to me. The brain has so many answers, and the more we understand it, the more we can work with it and understand why trauma affects us so great, and the body too. Because I had shocking chronic anxiety as a result of my trauma. So I just, you know, I find it fascinating. I think there's just so much to learn, and I love all the stuff coming out about the nervous system now and the brain, and particularly now seeing it come into the education as part of our understanding that kids don't just come in, sit down and learn. There's so much more behind it.
Yeah, they're in cognitive load. You've got to understand that cognitive load. Is their brain ready to learn? What needs to be attended to first?
Absolutely.
So tell us, I guess I want to encourage everybody to read the book Chasing Normal. And so we'll, at the end, we'll be able to let you know where you can find that, particularly as a teacher reading a book that a teacher knowing where you've gotten to in the end, and was really powerful for me, and knowing that the students that I've taught and the areas that I've taught in and unfortunately, so sometimes knowing the trauma that a student has experienced, and sometimes, as we spoke about before, finding out after the trauma that a student has experienced, and also knowing the teacher I was 20 years ago with the limited knowledge that I had and the mistakes that I've made teaching students who had experienced really significant trauma prior to me teaching them. There's so much that I want to know about you. Like, so what are your absolute musts just with kids, or particularly kids with trauma?
Well, I think, as I said before, I work predominantly with trauma impacted students. So it's been a really good practice ground for me to take what I've learned from trauma myself, because even though you go through trauma yourself, and as you said, 20 years ago I was a vastly different teacher, and I made many mistakes even from my own trauma background, and and that, the part of it where you're not really aware of the damage trauma's done to yourself, and if you're not sort of aware and present of that, then of course, there's going to be kids and people recipient of that. So now it's because I know better and I understand myself and my own trauma and how it affected me better. It's just always compassion first. And, we say it, but it really is looking beneath the behaviour. It's, someone years ago, I think, used to call it secondary behaviour. Like what is it that led to that behaviour? And we've got to look at what's behind the primary to see what's really going on. And because kids just don't have the language or the developmental stage to be able to communicate that. I mean, adults can't even communicate half the time what's annoying them. We just expect these little people to come in and go, look, I've just had a rough morning. I've just seen someone being beaten up, or I've got no food in the cupboard. We haven't had food for a week. Yeah. Or, it almost seems ridiculous, doesn't it, that we just expect these kids, and it's not a knowing. I think it's just a subconscious thing. Come in, sit down, but things happen, and they carry so much. And my first point of call is, hi, how you going? And something erupts, then it's it's just compassion first. What's going on, and give them the space, come down at their level and observe that they're actually going through something that they little minds and little bodies just can't handle. They don't know it's a skill. We keep saying regulation is a skill, and it is a skill. And especially if they're not getting that kind of nurturing, if they make a mistake at home, what are they met with there?
Yeah.
And and it's slow pace, we can't just go, oh, well, I helped you today. Are you good? Are you good now?
Yeah.
No, it's just,
it's never
work.
ending. It doesn't stop, does it? It doesn't.
Yeah. You get the little moments, but yeah.
You get the little moments. You get the little moments. Do you think that schools are too focused on curriculum, too much on the matter and not enough on the student?
I'm a relief teacher these days, and like I said, all I've worked in the last 3 years is with trauma students and other learning disabilities and other things. But I just don't like the way it is. I just think that teachers are under the pump, and it's not that they're doing what they know they need to do. It's not necessarily what they want to do. Because, look, in an ideal world, I think if we could just love these kids and let them play a little bit more and let them, be able to do things that open up their access to learning, I'm sure they would. But I think it's more further up, and just not that understanding that the world, we can't teach to a different world, and it is a different world. The way that we're teaching now, it doesn't work in this world anymore, I don't believe. Yeah.
Is rethinking that, and the us pretending that even just post-COVID world is the same as what it was pre-COVID world, and is
even just pretending that we know what the world's going to be like in 10 years' time. Like, the vast majority of these students are going to inherit a world that is so far different from what we have. That it's just the idea of teaching content is problematic, but the idea of teaching how to learn is so much more important.
Yep. And some of these kids know more than I do these days. I mean,
sure,
they're communicating in a vastly different way than I had something the other day that I just went, what? I didn't know that. Oh, where have you been, Mum? Clearly under a rock.
Yeah.
But they're just, and the way that they're taking that information in is vastly different. I mean, 20 years ago, it was just group work and collaboration.
Well, and we needed the teacher to be that, have all of that knowledge in their head, and now that this knowledge is just so accessible to our students. So it is about teaching how to be discerning, but most important, what you said before. So starting first with compassion as a teacher. You don't have to be the font of all knowledge anymore. You can teach them how to be good people as well, and really teaching them how to manage those emotions is going to be absolutely imperative for students, particularly who have experienced trauma, because very likely they're not going to be being taught how to do that at home.
Absolutely. And I think, because one of the things, one of the big things that having teachers that were compassionate to me, little did they know that I actually wanted that more than anything. I didn't care about the content.
Yeah.
I cared, do you care about me today? Because, particularly in Year 9, when I was completely ostracized from my family, I had no one. Like, I did not have an adult in my corner. And so when you go to school, you're not going, gee, I can't wait to get into that maths today. Can't wait to learn about
the
society
algebra,
today.
the long division. This is going to be our second lesson. I reckon I'm going to nail that.
I'm going to use it when I get home.
Yeah.
You're going, my anxiety was at peak because I was already what I knew I was dealing with at home, and then coming into the classroom and just having that connection with the teacher was really all I cared about. It was never about content.
Yeah.
The only teacher that I ever went, I'm actually learning something, because he managed to have that. I loved English. I'm a bit of it's always been my favourite subject, but my English teacher in Year 9 was the only reason I went to school. I wagged so much in Year 9. I just could not be in school as much as I love learning, because what was going on for me far outweighed the importance of learning something in society, or and that's what it's like for a lot of kids. I mean, they just come in, they just need and it's that association. So if we don't have someone in our corner, we grow up in a world believing no one cares. And if no one cares, then why bother?
Exactly.
That's what teachers gave me. Throughout my entire schooling, I deep dived into other teachers that I knew were going to give me what I needed, and it just kept me going. Each year I just found a teacher who connected with me, saw me, and that's actually, and this is what I say to people, even after leaving uni, because I had lecturers that were the same, that was sort of same adult nurturing, I looked outside once I finished university. I looked for people like that. Had I not had that sort of consistently with so many different teachers throughout 12, 16 years, I would be in a vastly different situation. Because there would have been no belief that anyone
you would have stopped looking. You would have stopped looking if you weren't. If you were looking and then you weren't finding, then it's terrifying to actually think what would have happened to you actually, Beck.
Absolutely.
And that's the absolute imperative nature of the job of being a teacher. We often talk about here, so often actually, so never has it come up with the content is everything. It always comes back to that that kids don't learn from teachers they don't like, that connect before correct. So it always 100% of the time it's come back to how important the relationship is before you can get any learning out of a student. So, but this is making it even more important. So it's kind of, at times it's life-saving kind of, and totally transforming the trajectory of where a student might end up, that connection.
Absolutely. And I mean, you've seen probably stories on LinkedIn and Facebook that say, kids will come in and reveal to the teacher, had I not come to school, it was the only place I knew to come.
Yeah.
So
it's the safest place for me.
Safest place.
Yeah.
And that very much rings true for me.
We do talk about, often there's those kids that we just naturally connect with, and how important those natural connections are. And then we've often given tips, and quite a few of our guests have given tips about how to connect with those kids that you don't have formed that natural connection with, and how important that is for those kids who think that you don't really like them. They see that you do like them. But I feel like this story today, Beck, is actually really reinforcing that how important those connections with kids that you have, that where the relationship comes a bit easier, and how you never know just how imperative that relationship is for those students that you're connecting with.
Well, I mean, I've had a student twice now, the last 2 Mondays, same class, and he does, well, definitely the first day did absolutely nothing, content-wise, nothing. And now I know that kids are afraid of unpredictability. So I'm a new teacher to him, and I'm not going to barrel in and say, come on, mate, come and sit down with the rest of us. It is purely observation for me. I come into the room, I see him, and I say, hello, how are you? My name's Miss Beck. And that's it. And that whole day, he walked in and out of the class, and I just want to make sure you're okay. You're going to the bathroom, just let me know. And that's all I focus on, is just him learning that I'm okay, that I'm okay with you. We're okay in the class together. And it's just this building of safety and trust first. And there's absolutely no demands or commands of any nature whatsoever. And so the next Monday, I had the class again and went through the same thing. But this time I got more eye contact. So when I was having discussions with the other kids, I was getting more eye contact. I'm like, oh, okay. So I opened that up to, did you want to say something? No, didn't want to say anything. Okay, no worries. And by the end of the second session before lunch, he came and sat with everyone else on the floor and was actually answering questions and engagement. Now, all I did was create what I thought was a safe presence. That's it. There was nothing, you're not going to be involved because you're not talking, you're not here with us. No, you can stay back there because you're refusing. There was none of that. It was just, he just needs to know I'm okay with him being in the room. And that was it. And so when he did come up, and, some kids will say, how come you're saying that it's good that he's talking? They don't understand that for him to jump from the back of the room to the front of the room and be literally 2 feet away from me and be willing to answer a question, put his hand up, I didn't coerce any of that. It's a massive deal.
Yeah.
And they're huge moments where there's nothing about the curriculum. And I'm sure when I see him next time, it'll just be, hi, how you going? It's always a clean slate for me. No matter what happens, if they erupt, and I know I've had that. I had a very scary situation a couple of years ago where a student was so overwhelmed by me being in the classroom that it didn't end very well. And I think a year later I saw him, I went into the wrong classroom and someone said, he'll take you. And I'm like, okay. And all I said was, I called him by name. I said, g'day, how you going? He goes, how do you know my name? And I just went, I don't know. I've been at the school for a while now. I know most kids' names. And I just never mentioned it. And then it ended up that I would see him at least once a week over the next 18 months after that. And I never, you know what I mean? And now we were on a good relationship. So, yeah, it is small steps, but when you get that reciprocation, it's huge.
Yeah. They're the magical moments, like they're, and I know that before you were seemingly having reluctance to call something a magical moment. That's magical. And that's something that, that those students, very possibly because of whatever's happened in their life, that the patience that somebody has shown for them when they're not at the best and they're not, they're aware. Sometimes they're aware they're not at the best. Sometimes they're not because the emotions are so big and they can't even remember what they've done or what's happened.
And that's it. That a lot of them, total dysregulation. They go offline, and I even know in that moment, even though I was shaking after it, he wouldn't have even remembered a lot of what happened. So, and that's it. It is, we don't know what they're dealing with at the end of the day, and they do need someone in their corner.
Yeah. So if we lead with compassion, I love that. That's going to be something I'm taking back to my staff and we talk about that, but it's just a nice little succinct way that step forward with compassion always first and foremost. And absolutely love it.
Yeah.
All right. I feel like I've nailed our say what questions today. So if you're okay, then we're going to play a little game called Say What, Beck. Are you okay with that?
Oh, look, why not?
Say what? So I'm going to assume you said yes then, because I thought for a second that you might have said no, hence why I had to play the sting over the top of you. All right. We're going to start with, well, you went to La Trobe, so we're going to start with La Trobe University. So how many students are currently enrolled at La Trobe University?
Okay, now I have to go first.
You do. So Mr. White's going first.
Now, are we talking La Trobe Bandura?
Yeah, which one? Which campus?
Oh, gosh. Come on, guys.
So, no. Now, you did say that you think you nailed these questions.
Okay, I nailed the second two. All right, we're skipping this one, and we're going to the ones that actually we're going to come back to that.
That'll be a tiebreaker.
If that's a tiebreaker, if anybody looks down, you're going to be in trouble. All right, I want to know, because we're talking right now about kids who we're talking. So I feel like 20 years ago, if somebody had have asked me how many kids in your class of 30 have experienced childhood trauma, I know that the stat that I would have said 20 years ago would be very different to the stat that I've said now, because I thought it was such a small number. So my question to you is, how many, this is from the Bureau of Statistics that we're going from here.
Which bureau? The Australian Bureau of Statistics?
the Australian Bureau, yes.
Not
Thank
the
you
Angel
very
Bureau
much.
of Statistics.
No,
okay.
not the Angel.
Was it Sharon's Bureau?
Yeah,
no,
right.
no, it's not. It's not. But thank you for checking. So what percentage of children or adolescents have been exposed to crime, violence, and abuse, either directly or indirectly?
Oh, wow. In Australia?
In Australia.
And we're looking for a percentage.
Yes, please.
Which is a
You're
number
stalling.
between 0 and 100.
You're stalling, Mr. White. I see what you're doing there. I see what you're doing. Yes.
And the crime that you are referring to?
So crime, violence, or abuse. It's a general term, and I'm not going to further bring that back in.
Okay. All right. Well, I'm going to go with 41%.
Very specific. I appreciate a specific answer.
Oh, well, let's go further. 41.6.
Wonderful. Thank you, Mr. White.
You're
so
welcome.
I guess really the question to you, Beck, is your answer 42%?
Or 41.7.
Or is it 40%?
Oh, I can't say my own answer.
You can.
No, of course
so
you can.
Are you going higher or lower? And then you can be very specific.
Okay, I'm definitely going higher.
Yes.
Yeah.
So what do you reckon it is?
Minimum 50%.
Well, very impressive, Miss Beck, because you are right, and it's actually 60% of students have been exposed to crime.
I could only give you one answer, but I would have finished that one.
Go for it. Yes.
Well, the statistics, I think it was the childhood maltreatment study from last year, actually, that said that 50% to 66% of students by the age of 16 have had at least one traumatic event in their life.
Yeah.
They're exposed
Wow.
to.
Yeah. Yep.
Right.
So, and I'm reading here, 50% of youth have been assaulted at least once.
Well,
50%.
Yeah.
Right.
Well,
yes.
Yeah, it's not very good. And it's funny when we think that they just come in and learn.
Exactly.
Yeah,
exactly.
that's
so
true
I guess the big thing, and I feel like that's been one of my big reflections and learnings over my 20-year career, is that I would have said, so if I've got a class of 30, so I'm talking, there might be that one student in there that has experienced trauma. That's probably what my thinking was back 20 years ago when I first started. And it's that it isn't one student in your class. It's the big thing that I'd love our teacher listeners to really take away. And so that trauma informed practice works for all kids in your class. And it doesn't just work for kids who have experienced trauma, but
Mm.
it absolutely is imperative and life-changing for those students who have experienced trauma in your class.
Well,
So my next question then, so Beck's obviously up 1-0.
No, 1-0,
So
okay.
what
I need
percentage
this one.
of Australian adults have experienced a traumatic event at some point in their life?
Gee, that's an interesting question after the previous one.
Thank you very much for saying that my question was interesting, Mr. White, but you are still stalling. So if you would give me an answer, that would be great.
Now, a percentage is a number between 0 and 100.
Okay, yes, thank you very much.
I would say that it would need to be more than the previous figure.
Mm.
Now, hang on. Is it trauma or crime? What was this? Sorry, can you repeat?
Traumatic event.
Experience or experience a traumatic event.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, well. Okay. I reckon the vast majority of adults would have experienced a traumatic event.
Do you need me to define trauma? I can. It's any event that involves exposure to actual or threatened death, serious injury, or sexual violence that has the potential to be traumatic. That's what I mean by a traumatic event.
Okay.
So now give me your percentage.
I think it's high.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just wondering
so it's
where
got to be
I had
above.
to box myself in here. Yeah, okay. I reckon 90%.
Ooh, okay. All right. And what are you thinking there, Beck?
Oh, good. I like that you're struggling here because last time you had an absolute ready-to-go answer. This time you're not so sure. We might be going to a tiebreaker.
Look, I mean, I know.
Really, remember, to beat him, you've got to go 91% or 89%. Is it going to be a little bit more than 90% or is it going to be a little bit less than 90%?
Yeah. Just let Beck answer the question, please.
Well, I mean, isn't the presumption that trauma stays in childhood? It doesn't actually flow on. Look, I actually think it is lower, as stupidly as that sounds, because it doesn't really make sense in light of the last stat. But I don't think it's that high. But I would have said around 75%. But anyway.
All right. Well, if you said 75%, you would be exactly right. Because it was actually estimated that 75% actually, Beck. I mean, are you writing these have experienced a traumatic event?
You're pretending to have a stab, Beck. You know this data backwards. Come on. That was impressive.
Not that one, but I know, like I said, I only learnt the other stat the other day. I know I've read a lot of stats. I just don't remember a lot of them. So that was literally one.
Yes, that sticks with you. And I found, as I was doing this before, like the 75% of adults experiencing that I didn't find that particularly shocking, but still that 60% number
absolutely.
of kids in our classes, that's still, you know, I've
many reasons.
I've been in lots of classrooms and done, and that still rocks my world and gives me a lot of pause to think about.
Yes, absolutely. And look, the obvious adults have had more time to experience that trauma.
Yeah.
And so you got. I mean, that I think makes it exponentially more so for children because they've been on the planet for a shorter amount of time, and you know the idea of society is to protect them from this. But clearly, 60. Oh, that's an amazing percentage
and heartbreaking, absolutely heartbreaking. So it just shows how important this conversation is, Beck. And so I want to thank you again for sharing your experience, and really want to encourage our listeners to, it is really a must read, and particularly if you've now listened to this episode, seen and heard from Beck and the life that she is living. If you know the road that she's traveled, it's even more spectacular to be able to talk to the person. So Beck, how do our listeners engage more with you, get contact with your book, or can connect with you on any of your socials?
Well, I'm on a couple. I'm probably Instagram. I'm on Instagram, Facebook, and I have a website where most teachers actually can grab a book, and it's ebook or paperback. So I offer both formats. So so personally, I'm on Instagram and Facebook, but professionally and personally, I also run the Trauma Informed Teachers page as well on Facebook. So we sort of get into a lot of the stuff on trauma, the effects of trauma, and it's really I think there's over 3,000 teachers and people that work all across the board with children, and I love that space. It's such a great space because teachers come and get support and information, and it just changes the game. It changes the language, changes their approach, and a lot of these teachers are in the old school of university where we didn't get taught about trauma as a part of our teaching degree. It wasn't even a word, I don't think, that came up in my 4 years. And so a lot of them, are going back to uni to study. A lot of them can't, for whatever reason, can't. So it's just a great space to be able to come for support, especially, they're struggling at school. And so that's kind of where I am.
Fantastic.
So I'm on that
Beck also
Facebook site here, Trauma Informed Teachers Australia.
Yes.
I'm joining it right now. Fantastic.
Oh, wonderful.
Love it.
See if you get approved.
Yeah, I know.
Can I vouch for him?
It's a bit of a screening process.
I'll put up a corny joke. See how we go. Yeah.
Well, it's funny because it's very well. I mean, I'm a bit. It's very well screened. I love maintaining the integrity of it. So
sure.
We'll see how you go.
Yeah.
Sure. Okay. All right. Well, I'll put in my application. I'll give it my best crack, and I'll leave it up to you.
Let us know how you go, Mr. White.
I will.
Yes.
I will.
Yes, you've received a lot of positive feedback before this podcast started, so I feel like she's really brought you down a peg or two just then, which I appreciate.
I know you appreciate it.
Awesome. Well, Beck, you have been an absolute delight, and I'm so glad that we have had a chance to chat with you. I feel like we could chat all day, and I think we might need a second edition of an interview with you, so we can find out some more things. So I would like to say thank you so much for wanting to be part of Teachers Change Lives podcast, and for choosing teaching and choosing to share your really, really imperative story.
Thank you. I really appreciate having a chat. It's been really good. Who knew trauma-informed conversation could be so enlightening.
So and enjoyable.
And
even.
enjoyable.
Yes.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yes.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's great.
Love it. All right, great. Everybody, get on board that Facebook group and further enlighten yourself and spend some more time with Beck. Mr. White.
Yes.
Good afternoon, Mr. White.
Good afternoon, Mrs. Angel. Thank you for the lesson.
Week,
that was great.
No worries at all. Thank you to our guest, Beck, and we'll see everybody next week.
Thanks, Beck. See you all.
Thank you. Bye.
Powered by Riverside.